Hello and welcome. My name is Adam Barnard, and on behalf of GateWorld.net, I'm here with actress Salome Azizi, who plays Aset in Stargate Origins. Salome, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Adam.
It's a pleasure. Your name almost sounds like something from Stargate. It's an incredible name. What's the root of that? Where does that come from?
Actually, Salome is from the Bible, and she was
Oh,
a princess. She was the one who fell in love with John the Baptist, and then did the dance of the seven veils to seduce her stepfather in order to get John the Baptist beheaded because he wouldn't kiss her.
oh my
He was
goodness.
in love with her. So yeah, she's quite a character.
I didn't know that, and I feel like I failed. I failed my upbringing because I grew up in the church, and I grew up going to church every Sunday. So I should have recognized that, but I didn't. So where are you from?
Yeah, I was born in Iran. I'm from Iran, and that name, it's well, my mom just really I think she read the story of Salome, or she read another book that had Salome as one of the main characters, and she fell in love with that name, and that's where I got it from. So, but I'm originally from Iran, and then I grew up in London as a little girl.
Yeah, you do have an English. That's an English accent, correct?
Yeah, what's left of it anyway? I don't know if it's still
Right.
there
When did you
fully,
move?
but
When
yeah.
did you move from Iran to England?
I think I was probably about 5 or 6, something like that. I can't remember exactly what year it was, but I was really young. Yeah.
Okay. So you kind of you got the English. You grew up in that English setting pretty early on, so that was the pronunciation of the words that you learned at that point,
Yeah.
right? That's so when did I'm guessing at some point you came to the United States. Can you tell us a bit about how you got into the film industry as an actress and how your journey, once you moved to England led to that?
Yeah, I always wanted to act, but when I went to university and I got my law degree, and because at the time I wasn't really committed to it, but it was something that I really wanted to do. But I wanted to have like a job that was stable. And so I was like, oh, maybe, I sort of like got my law degree and all that stuff. But once I started practicing, I realized that it wasn't I enjoyed studying it, but it wasn't something I wanted to commit my life to.
Right.
So I kind of dabbled in other things. I got into like journalism, production, all that stuff. And then when I moved to San Francisco, which is where I landed when I came to America, I started working for an advertising agency. But and at that time I was married, and then my marriage kind of like started to disintegrate. So I thought I seized my opportunity to come to Los Angeles and pursue my lifelong passion of acting.
Oh
So
wow.
here I am.
How long ago
Yes.
did you move to LA then? Was it recently or?
Um, it was about 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago.
And you've had quite a storied career since then, right? Like you have a pretty significant amount of credits for just being in the industry for like 4 years.
Yeah, I got really lucky. It was quite an exciting run for me. I hope it's not over yet.
Well, Stargate is a very great place to be to continue and elevate your career. The role is just incredible. I wanted to ask, being someone who has a Middle Eastern background, did you ever find you were getting like typecast a lot, and how does this role differ? Or maybe it doesn't differ from the other roles you've gotten, because I know like with Siobhan Aladdin, who played Wasif, it was interesting because I heard a story that he was so excited to get this because so many times he's been playing, this insurgent or this terrorist. You get cast in all the action shows, and it's kind of unfortunate that so many talented actors get, cast for one specific myopic role. So what was how did Stargate role of Aset tie into kind of your career profile?
Well, actually, let me just say something about that, like being typecast. I know a lot of people don't like being typecast, and I think it's like disappointing because they're constantly getting, terrorist number one or whatever. But one of my acting coaches, Aaron Spicer, when I first started, he was saying that actually it's a good thing because if you become typecast, you do it so well, you become so amazing at it that eventually people are like, oh, let's get the terrorist or I don't know, the nurse or whatever it is, and then they'll immediately think of you because you can become so good at doing that. And then once you get your foot in, then you can start expanding and going,
Right.
exploring other characters. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing.
Okay.
But as for me, I have been very lucky because I haven't really been typecast, and I think that has a lot to do with my English accent. So with that, I've got a lot of like journalists and doctor roles, and I've done a lot of different things actually. So no, I don't think I've ever been typecast. I did go out for a lot of open ethnicity stuff. So I'm not just stuck in like Middle Eastern or, you know.
You played a doctor on the network show Blackish, right? You had like a recurring role, right?
That's right, yeah. And then I also played like a director, which was another recurring role, and that was in Famous in Love. That was recent. And I played a journalist. I've like for NCIS and like a mother for this movie that I did back in 2016, American Fighter, and actually the second one is coming out either this summer or early next year. The first one was called American Wrestler. This is called American Fighter. So it's like I've been lucky enough to have quite varied characters to play.
So in regards to Stargate, when you went out for the audition, or just say even the day before you went out for the audition, did you know anything about the franchise? Had you heard of it? Had you perhaps been a fan of previous shows?
Yeah, I've always been a fan of sci-fi, and I had watched Stargate many years ago, and I enjoyed it. I remembered it. But when I went out for the audition, I didn't know it was for Stargate at all. The way it was done, I thought I was going for like, because they said it was a web series. So I was thinking it's like a student project or something,
Right.
something like that. I didn't even know it was Stargate. Even up to the point where I got the script, I still didn't know it was Stargate. When I got cast, I didn't know it was Stargate. All I knew was that it's the character and it's a web show, and it's going to go on for X amount of weeks, and I was really excited to be a part of it. But then once I started reading the script, and I was like, Stargate. Like I remember at some point I was like, oh, I think they better have the rights to this because it's for. Because Stargate was a movie, and I don't know what they're doing with it.
Right.
And then once it clicked, I was like, oh my God, Stargate.
That's so cool.
So that was nice.
So what was it? Did you have to audition multiple times? Did you do any chemistry reads, or is it just like you went straight from an audition tape or an audition to an offer?
I remember, no, I did it. I did a tape, and then I went in for a callback, and that was it. I did a self-tape. And I remember for the self-tape, I had to speak in ancient Egyptian, and they had the clip from the first Stargate, right? But
Right.
because the ancient Egyptian was the audio was manipulated, I couldn't understand. I mean, you couldn't understand what it was saying anyway, but
because they have that like flanger phaser effect on the voice, right? Is that?
Yeah, exactly. And I put my on Facebook. I was like, "Who speaks Egyptian?" Or because I thought it was Egyptian, And I spoke to a couple of my friends who listened to it, and they were like, "I have no idea I don't know what it's saying. It's not Egyptian. It's not Arabic. It's not." I didn't even actually say Egyptian. I said Arabic. But what I did is I just went online and found something online which was audible, and I just did that. I didn't even do what they were asking me to do. I just did something of my own.
So yeah, once you got cast in the role, it's quite an opulent costume design and a setup. How long did it take to get into costume and makeup and incorporate that into your performance?
Okay, so my bloody setup took forever because, first of all, I had to wear those lenses, right? And those lenses were like the nightmare. They were my nightmare. They were like horrible because they were the size of my eyeballs, right? And I couldn't do it myself. So somebody else had to like put those things in my eyes. And then once they were in, I couldn't see anything because it was like everything was blurry. I had literally one sliver in the eye, and the lens where you could see, but it wasn't even like in the center of my eyes. So it was really difficult. And people had to walk me around because I couldn't see what I was doing. And unfortunately, I had to put those lenses in first because my eyes were like watering and crying so much. So I had to get over that so it wouldn't ruin the makeup. And then, of course, the makeup and the outfits, all that stuff I loved. But yeah, I think it took me an hour and a half every day before I got ready to go on set. But, the team were so amazing and so talented and so creative. Everything was amazing. They did such an amazing job. Seriously, it was like hands down amazing.
Yeah, because it's not just like one element, like the eyes or the hair. It's like hair, makeup, eyes, pretty wild costumes. So that's like it's a whole ordeal.
It really is. Yeah, it was amazing. They did great.
Did you get to contribute at all, like any ideas to just like the appearance of the character, not even like the performance choices, like with the hair or with the makeup design or costume or stuff like that?
No, I didn't. But I think they had it spot on because I went to see Kit, who was in charge of the costumes, and I sort of she read me really well, I think, and I think she did that with all the characters. She just sort of looked at you, and then based on your look and who you are, she sort of went on with created these amazing wardrobe pieces. So I didn't feel the need to say anything. You know what I mean? In terms of
right.
They had it down, and then the makeup and the wig and all that stuff, everything they were spot on. I didn't feel the need to make any adjustments or anything. You know what I mean? I think they had the character really pinned well.
And speaking of the character, Aset is different from a typical goa'uld villain, especially if we're talking about villains from the TV shows, because they were very heavily featured in so many seasons of SG-1. She has a almost like benevolent or nurturing disposition. I mean, she has a Harcesis, a forbidden child, as well. It's kind of like, it's so weird because she's a villain, she's an authoritarian, but she also has like a very personable side, and that doesn't make her the most amenable to other goa'uld, and especially to her master Ra. Where do you think like that philosophy comes from for the character? What did you see as her backstory, or her becoming this very dynamic sort of quote villain?
Well, for me, I never saw her as a villain at all. She's a goddess Isis, and if you go back into the history of Egyptian culture, you'll see that this goddess she was one of the main, like the first gods that was worshipped, and to this day, this character is still worshipped in some cultures. And you're right, she represents so much, her character. She's a mother, she's the goddess of the underworld, she's the goddess of the poor, the rich, she's a protector, she's brave. So all these elements were what I wanted to embody for this character, because that's who I was looking to. So for me, she was never a villain. You know what I mean? She was just somebody who was fighting to keep her child alive and to make this a better world for her people. And so she did whatever she needed to do. She hurt some people along the way, but it was really for the better of the people and her world. And Ra and her had some issues in the past, so
complicated relationship, right?
Yeah, exactly. So she's super smart to me, and she's a diplomat, and she's a goddess, and that's what I wanted to bring out. I didn't look at any other sort of villains in the Stargate family or stories. I just didn't look. I didn't go there because to me this was not that.
Well, there was definitely a regality to the character, a royalty. She had this presence, and it's interesting when Bruca and the Germans also have a real presence. Mm-hmm. But when you put them in the same room as Aset, which one of the highlights for Origins was in episode 6, where pretty much all of it takes place in like that prison chamber, and it's just a communication between Professor Langford, the Nazis, and Aset and Serket. And it's so funny when you put the two together. Bruka's bluster is kind of diminished in the presence of Aset because she just has this magnetizing personality, like a larger than life personality, in my opinion.
Damn, she's a goddess. Of course she does.
Well, it's different, and like that was one of the highlights when you do these kinds of shows, especially for a show like Stargate that has such an entrenched and storied history. You want to bring something that provides a familiar character, a race of aliens, but gives it a spin. And yeah, she is a little less villainous. Like I think I said before, it was a bit not really a mustache twirling villain like we're used to. It's kind of like a villain who I think at one point she says, "Let him speak," or "Let them fight it out." She's not a control freak. She has so much like respect and emotional awareness for those around her, which I think ties into her motherhood, I would suppose, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right about that. And I'm glad she wasn't mustache twirling. I'm really happy that I got the opportunity to play this character. I think it was, as a woman, for me, it was very empowering. Something that they say is that you don't choose the parts, they choose you. And I think it's absolutely correct, for like, as an actor, it's all a journey. And for me, it was, I think this character came across in my life at a time where, I needed that more, it empowered me and it made me feel strong. And I think that, I hope that came across in the character that I've Aset. Yeah, but you're right. Yeah. I think she has depth and she's smart and she has love and compassion, but also she will do whatever she needs to do to get the stuff done.
And especially protect your child as well.
Oh, yeah.
Like when you become a parent, it just becomes such a priority to protect your children and to guard them. A question, like, with the character, was there any references outside of Egyptian mythology or Stargate that you pulled on as influences? How you kind of brought her to life as an actress with her movement, her presence. You know what I'm saying? Like, extending beyond what you go to, which is Egyptian history or what's in the script. What part of yourself or other influences were you able to infuse in that character?
I don't think I looked... this is one thing that I was quite aware of, and it was, I didn't go to look elsewhere for, like, villains, you know what I mean? I just it was something that just came out naturally. It wasn't something that I planned, and I think, actors, it's best not to plan. It's just, you have to sit with it and then let the character grow, and then whatever comes out, you know what I mean? It's not something that you plan. So no, I didn't go elsewhere for it. I just really focused on the material and the script and went into the world of my imagination.
Was there any highlights on set, like specifically like certain scenes or character beats that, or just, experiences with the individuals on set that, like, yes, that's the moment I'm going to remember in 3 decades. That's like the cherished experience from shooting Stargate Origins.
Yeah, one of the ones that I will always remember was that very first day when I went on set and I couldn't remember the Egyptian that I had memorized. It was really bad because it was my first day, and I spent, they put those lenses on me and I couldn't see anything, and it was really kind of stressful. And we were doing episode 8 is what we were doing. That was the first one we shot, and all of a sudden I forgot. I couldn't remember anything, and I was like, I started to really panic because I was like, I'm going to get fired, and it's like my first day. And then there was like, people were trying to help me out, and it was like lunchtime. We were on break and everybody else was eating and I couldn't eat. I just wanted to throw up and I didn't know what to do. I was panicking. And then at one point I was like, okay, it. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to make this up. Nobody else knows what I'm saying anyway, right? I'm going to get it as close as I can. And at worst, they'll just be like, okay, let's do it in post. Say it again. And that's exactly what I did. So I went on, and because the whole time I was in my head going, Oh my God, I can't remember. So basically, when my scene came up, I just made up stuff. I mean, I just went on with whatever I had in my head,
Right.
and then, but nobody knew the difference anyway. At that point, I was really liberated and empowered as an actor because I was able to get into the character and not think, oh shit, what's my next Egyptian line? You know what I mean? So for me, that was a really important moment because I felt I made a choice. I got back into the character, and it was liberating, and I was fearless, and I felt good about it. It was really, really good.
It's cool that you use that word liberated, because that's something I've heard you say a couple times. Like, the role really put you in a position where you could just act and go on instinct and emotion and not do this precision balancing act. I think we could both agree, first off, that like Aset is a dynamic female character, and and that's really important to have, because not all of them have that kind of empowerment and dynamism. So like, just like perhaps as an actress, what do you see in your experience as the necessary factors or elements to create not just a dynamic female character, but like a dynamic leader who's would be often classified as a villain, but actually has more to them and isn't just kind of like a sexist cutout of what like a female villain would be, if that makes sense?
Well, I think that's down to the actor really, because you have to bring your own personal experiences, life experiences, and make that character real. I mean, I know it's sci-fi, and I think I remember at some point I was like, well, I don't want her to die. It was really important for me to make sure that Aset wasn't like an alien, like two-dimensional, or because for me she's a person, right? And I think in acting, it doesn't matter what genre you're in. Really, we're just telling a story, and we want to be truthful. We want to tell the truth of that moment, of that emotion, of that speech, or whatever it is that we're doing. So every character is multidimensional. You know what I mean? So I think it's really important for the actors to bring that to the table and not just go with stereotypes.
Yeah, it's interesting. As I get older, I start to notice there's less and less of a clear distinction between good and evil. Kind of like we were talking about earlier. We're brought up to look at movies and say that's the good guy and that's the bad guy, and the good guy needs to kill the bad guy to finish the movie and win at what he's trying to do. And like, in life, there aren't really very many villains. There are just people with different, who want different things and are willing to use different methods to achieve that. And I think like one of the interesting things about Origins was we kind of don't just have a hero and a villain. We have three parties. We have the Langfords and Captain Beale and Wasif, and then we have the Germans, and then we have Aset and Serket, and I guess kind of a fourth group of people, which are the Abadonians. And you kind of start to realize like, it's not all cut and dry, and you have to ask yourself, who is the villain in this story? I think in this story it was more the Germans, but it put Aset in an interesting situation, because it's not the baddie that's threatening Earth with a nuclear weapon. It's kind of like more intimate and personal to that specific character.
Yeah, and also that brings to mind the, like one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. It's the same kind of concept. It depends if you're the Germans, you're probably thinking, you don't see yourself as the villain. You know what I mean? Like, for example, in real life, you and I don't do something, doing it going, oh God, that's really bad, but I'm going to do it anyway. Do you know what I mean? That's not how we think. Whatever we're doing is justified, even if it's perceived as wrong by other people. And that, I think, is true of characters that you play, whether they're villains or not. You know what I mean? You don't judge yourself. You're doing it because it means something to you. And then the story plays out, and the audience takes sides or not,
Yeah, and Aset really wasn't a threat until the people from Earth came to her homeworld. You know, it wasn't like an Independence Day situation where they come with big spaceships over our cities. Like, this is someone who our characters, our heroes from Earth, are on your character's turf, or on Aset's turf, and Aset is balancing a very difficult platter of family and providing for people, and also answering to a higher power. I wanted to ask, have you gotten a chance earlier in your career to play any other kind of, I guess we can't use this word, but bad guys or villains or people in the story who you are perhaps view as the antagonist?
No, God, I wish I had more opportunity to play the bad guys. I think they're so much fun because you can do so much more with them. You know, you can get away with so much more. And but no, I think Aset is probably my first villain.
That's so cool.
I know. I want to be a villain.
So what has it been like to join the Stargate community and be ushered in that family? Have you gotten to know the fans or do any interviews, or what has that experience been like to do a sci-fi franchise, which I think this is your first, if I'm correct?
Yeah, this is my first. Well, it's been a really welcoming community. So I've made lots of friends on Facebook and social media, and and everyone's been really friendly and lovely and supportive. And I've got fan art, which I really appreciate and I love. I think it's amazing. People have just been lovely. I really love it.
Well, we're so glad that you are a part of the Stargate family, and thank you again for doing this interview and shedding a bit of light on your character. I want to ask, before you go, any future projects you have coming up? Can we put your Twitter in the bio of the video and direct people to your social media? Like, where can fans follow your future career?
So I'm on Instagram, and it's Salome1, which is SALOME, number 1. And then I think Twitter, but I can't remember my account.
I'll find it for you. I'll get it for you.
Okay, I can't remember that one. What have I got coming up? I have a movie coming out called American Fighter, and I'm not sure of the release date yet, but it's either going to be in the summer or beginning of next year. It's a sequel to another movie that we did, which is really good.
Well, we look forward to seeing you in many more movies, and perhaps many more villainous roles as well. Quote, villainous roles.
Yes! I want to play a serial killer next.
Oh boy, so you're really going for it. You're just going all out. Like, let's try the craziest villain we can possibly find.
Go crazy.
Awesome. Well, best of luck. Thank you for taking some time to talk with us today.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.